What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Today I want to talk to you about the Green Hornet Omnibus from Dynamite Comics. This is written by Kevin Smith with art breakdowns by Phil Hester and art by Jonathan Lau and covers by Alex Ross. At least some of the covers are. I think they all are. I'm not sure. But anyway, this collects 3 5-issue miniseries featuring the Green Hornet and Kato from Dynamite Comics. And this is a really bizarre comic. I don't think there has ever been a more unusual and unique process in turning something from conception to comic book than this book right here. So the story goes that Kevin Smith wrote a Green Hornet script for a movie, and he was hired to write and direct this movie. He wrote the script and then decided he did not want to direct the movie, so he handed off the script and he got paid for it. And then years later, for whatever reason, they never made the movie. Years later, Dynamite Comics, the guy in charge, he calls Kevin Smith and says, "Would you like to write a Green Hornet comic book series?" And Kevin Smith says, A, he hasn't had much luck writing the Green Hornet in the past, which, I mean, he had luck writing it, he just didn't have luck making the movie. And B, he was busy making another movie, which was a Cop-Out with Bruce Willis. And so they contact Disney, and they come to an agreement that they will use Kevin Smith's movie script and turn it into a comic book as long as Kevin Smith does not get paid for it again, since he was already paid for the script when he wrote it the first time. And so they hand it off to Phil Hester, who is an artist that I love immensely. I have always liked his work. Unfortunately, if you look at the work in this comic book, it does not look anything like anything that Phil Hester has ever done before. Phil Hester's art has that kind of angular, cartoony kind of style. Looks kind of similar to something like Bruce Timm or Darwin Cook. Very much in that style. But anything in here, I'll just go ahead and open up a page. Actually, that's not a great page because that's a big explosion. Here we go. Okay, you've got characters here talking. That doesn't really look anything like what Phil Hester draws. This is basically just Jonathan Lau drawing it. Kevin Smith in the foreword said that Phil Hester did stick figures and then Jonathan Lau did the actual drawing over that, and I'm prepared to believe him because this does not look anything like what Phil Hester did. I'm assuming Phil Hester spent about 2 minutes doing the stick figures for each page, or each issue, and then Jonathan Lau just did the work. I don't know why Phil Hester's name is even on here. I don't know why they even had him do the art breakdowns. I don't know if Jonathan Lau just wasn't comfortable doing the layout of each panel. Like, I don't know where the character should be standing in this panel, but Phil Hester comes in and does a quick stick figure saying Green Hornet stands here, bad guy stands here, and then Lau can say, "Oh, okay, I'll draw over that." I don't know. I don't know the process that went behind that, but I don't really like the art here. At times, when it's just characters standing and talking to each other, it's fine. But a lot of the fight scenes here, especially in the first 2/3 of the book, I feel like it gets a little better in the last third, but in the first 2/3 of the book, there are times where I have no idea what's going on because the page is not showing me what's going on. There will be a fight where Kato is fighting some people over here, and then Green Hornet is fighting some people over here, and then at one point you hear a sound effect, and then Green Hornet comes back to headquarters, and Kato's cousin, who is kind of the Q branch of the whole operation, Green Hornet comes to him and shows his pants, and it's like, "There's a hole in my pants, you need to fix my pants." And I don't know what happened because you didn't see what happened. You just see a sound effect and a close-up on Britt's face. The art is not the best here, and I hate to say that because ordinarily I like Phil Hester's artwork, and I don't know how much involvement he actually had here. And I don't even know how much involvement Kevin Smith had here because if you look at this, the first 2/3, or the first 2 minis, is kind of one big story. It's basically the origin story for this Green Hornet. And then the third miniseries that's collected here is its own thing entirely. It doesn't have anything to do with what was going on in the first 2. It follows the events of the first 2 minis, but it's its own separate thing. If this was a movie, this would basically have just been the first 10 issues collected here, and then the next 5 issues, they would have been its own thing. And by the way, whoever collected this, whoever said, "We're just going to collect the first 15 issues in this omnibus," you need to do a better job because this ends on a huge cliffhanger. The last miniseries here, we have this Church of Muerte, I think is what it's called, a Cena de Muerte. It's really dumb. They actually describe it as, it's like the Catholic Church, but they worship death, and it's just really stupid. So the Green Hornet deals with that, and then in like the last issue of that miniseries, he has another bad guy, the Red Hand, that he has to deal with, and that character is kind of connected to the bad guys from the first 2 minis, and then this volume just ends with the Green Hornet going after him. We don't have any closure to the Red Hand storyline, and that's just very sloppily done. done. Now, if you're reading it month to month in single issues, that's not going to be a problem. But if you buy this omnibus, at least for me, I kind of expect it to end, not necessarily end for good, but at least end in such a way where I can feel like I got a complete unit of entertainment, and then if I want to go and get volume 2 of the next omnibus, I can, but I don't want it to end right in the middle of a story. I don't like that. But anyway, I don't know how much Kevin Smith actually had to do with this because, like I said, he was busy working on Cop-Out, and apparently after they would get the art done, he would come back in and he would fine-tune the dialogue a little bit because he said it was outdated dialogue, which is a bad sign from the get-go. I'm not going to say that dialogue should always be timeless. If you look at a movie like Casablanca that came out in the early 1940s, if you tried to put that out today, people would say, hey, this dialogue seems a little dated, because there are times in that movie where they're talking and they're not talking like someone in the year 2019. That's fine. I don't expect a 60, 70-year-old movie to be completely timeless in its dialogue. But this script that Kevin Smith wrote was then used as the template for this comic book, it's less than 10 years old. It shouldn't need that much fine-tuning. And if you fear that the dialogue is that out of date, then you're probably working with a pretty faulty story from the word go. And that would have concerned me if I was Phil Hester or Jonathan Lau or the editor. If Kevin Smith came in and said, that dialogue is no good, I'm going to have to fine-tune it a little bit, because I'd be thinking, what are you doing? Why does it need to be fine-tuned? What's wrong with it? I don't know if Kevin Smith just came in and changed a few words here and there and the basic overall plot was the same. I really have no idea. But overall, I would have to say, if you are a Green Hornet fan, if you haven't already read this, don't bother. I don't think it's very good. Maybe some of the later stuff is good, because as far as I can tell, all of the Dynamite stuff, with a few exceptions here and there, but all of the Green Hornet Dynamite stuff involves this version of Britt and Kato. And I guess I should talk about that a little bit before I do my closing remarks. But this is basically an alternate reality where you had the Green Hornet, the original Green Hornet. He and the original Kato, they fought crime for a little while, and then once, I guess, all of crime in the city was completely disbanded and never coming back again, these two guys retire, and then 20, 30 years later, crime comes back all of a sudden, and then the new Green Hornet is Britt Reed Jr. His dad dies in a kind of weird origin story where all of the bad guys know who the Green Hornet is. This was a weird thing where you, the audience, are aware of something before the Green Hornet is aware of it. And so for like 3 issues where the Green Hornet is trying to figure out who killed his dad, you're over here screaming at the comic book, it's that guy over there, he's the one who did it. That's something, I've never written a comic book before, but I don't feel like you should ever know something before the main character does. I feel like that's something you should find out along with them, so that you're not pulling your hair out saying, come on, figure this out so that we can move on with the story. Now, I guess I will give this comic props and say it didn't take them nearly as long for them to figure out who did the murdering as I thought it would. It was still only like 3 issues, but still it shouldn't have taken that long. But anyway, this is, I guess, a good origin story for the character. Just me personally, this is not an attack on this book, because I'm sure I'm the only one who really thinks about this, but characters like the Shadow, the Phantom, the Green Hornet, Flash Gordon, I prefer that those characters stay in the 1930s, unless you are going to age them appropriately. If you're going to do a Green Hornet story set in the 1960s, then appropriately age the Green Hornet and Kato 30 years. This is not what they do. In the first issue here, we see the original Green Hornet when he retires. He and his wife, and by the way, she is just horrible, and I hate to say it, I was kind of glad that she wasn't in the rest of the book, because she pulls a gun on her husband when he walks in, and then he like grabs her arm and twists it around her back, and she's like yelling at him, saying that she's going to divorce him if he ever does that again. And he says, "You pulled a gun on me," and she's like, "Yeah, well, it was empty." And I was just, wow, like I was really glad that she wasn't part of the rest of this book. But anyway, then they're like making a cutesy little reference to Indiana Jones. So I'm guessing this is supposed to be set. The rest of the book is supposed to be set in the present day. If at the very earliest this was set in 1984 when the original Green Hornet retired. I don't like that, but again, I'm sure most people don't really care. You can do Green Hornet stuff set in the present day. Me personally, I would prefer the Green Hornet and Kato be set in the 1930s, but I think most of the Green Hornet stuff from Dynamite is this version of the Green Hornet and Kato, where you have the old Kato who helped the old Green Hornet who's now dead. He's still around, kind of acting like old Bruce from Batman Beyond, kind of guiding our new hero from the side. And then you have his daughter, who is the new Kato, and then you have his nephew, a guy named Clutch, who is the guy who designs all the clothes and the weapons and the cards and stuff, and he is one of the most irritating characters in all of fiction. Just really, really irritating when he's talking about, because he's I guess of mixed race. I'm not really sure. It's not easy to tell looking at it if he's a full-blown white guy or if he is half white, half Chinese. I don't know, because at one point he's talking about how, and he says it in some really crude, disgusting way, he says his dad liked to eat Chinese or something like that. So I guess maybe he's supposed to be like his mom was the original Kato's sister, maybe, because he is called the original Kato's nephew, but he looks like a white guy, and at one point Britt even says, wait a minute, you're white. So, I don't know. But anyway, I think they could have just gotten rid of this character, and they could have just had the original Kato and the new Kato both be the ones designing the guns and the weapons and the cars and the costumes and all that. I don't really think you needed a third Kato who's incredibly annoying and has all of this really irritating dialogue, especially since he doesn't really do anything here that these other two characters couldn't do themselves. At one point, he kind of gives a really horrible pep talk to Britt because Britt is afraid that he's killed someone, and he's rightly kind of upset about it, and Clutch is over here basically coming short of punching him in the face, saying, like, you gotta get over yourself. And I feel like you could take that pep talk, rewrite it so that it's actually better, and then give it to one of the other Katos, and the story wouldn't change that much. But anyway, overall, I've been all over the place with this review because it's a long book, and there's a lot to talk about here. I didn't really like this, but other people, I heard one review of this that has since been taken off of YouTube, and it was just a completely glowing review, so maybe I'm the weird one who doesn't like this, and maybe everyone else does. I didn't really think it was that good. I don't think that taking a movie script and turning it into a comic book is a very good idea. I think that you should just work with the medium that you have. Maybe if they had taken a script that Kevin Smith wrote, looked at the plot, and said, okay, now we are going to take that plot and we're going to turn it into a comic book script, that might have worked a little bit better. And Phil Hester, he's not just an artist, he's also a writer. He could have taken that script and he could have adapted it into a comic book script that would have worked better as a comic book, since he was already working on this comic anyway. But they didn't do that, and I feel like that is a big reason why some of this just doesn't work for me. The pacing is a little weird. I feel like this could have been a little shorter. There's entire issues here. There's one issue, the entire issue is a car chase, and that would have been less than 5 minutes in a movie, but it's an entire issue of a comic book. I feel like this could have been shortened a little bit. I don't think that it had to be as long as it was, and also, it's just not very good all around. There's one part here where Kato tells Britt that she is a lesbian, and he spends like 2 pages freaking out about that, like, whoa, you're into girls? Whoa, are you sure? And then a few issues later, she says, no, I was just kidding. And I feel like if this was a movie, I think Kevin Smith probably wanted her to actually be a lesbian, but then whoever took this in the direction that it went, because if you look at the credits, Kevin Smith is not credited as the writer for the whole 15 issues collected here, but it doesn't really credit a writer after he stops being involved with this comic, so I have no idea who is actually writing this thing. Maybe it's Phil Hester, maybe it's Jonathan Lau and Phil Hester together, I don't know, but anyway, I guess they figured that they wanted to have more of a will they won't they thing between Kato and the Green Hornet. I don't care, I just wish that they didn't have this borderline homophobic reaction from the Green Hornet when she tells him that she's a lesbian. But anyway, this is a bad book. I don't recommend that you guys read it. If you're interested in reading something with the Green Hornet, literally anything else, don't read this. There's some other Green Hornet books that I bought whenever I bought this one because I was in a big Green Hornet mood, so I ordered a whole bunch of Green Hornet stuff. This one is not what I would recommend. Several years ago, I read a book called The Shadow, Green Hornet, Dark Knights. Read that one. That one was pretty good. It wasn't bad. And you'll probably see some reviews of other Green Hornet stuff from me in the coming weeks as I read those other books. Knock on wood, hopefully those are better than this. But anyway, this was pretty bad. Hopefully you guys didn't have to read through this like I did. With that being said, I am the Comics Kid 2099, and I will see you guys in the future. Have a great rest of the day.